Hello everyone and welcome to our second weekly devlog video. So what I've been up to during the last week, right after I pushed the first video, which did well on YouTube, by the way, I am thankful, I've been working on a tree. I decided that I want to try something that I never did before, and yeah, I never modeled a tree, I never modeled, in fact, any kind of foliage in Blender, and I've never put any texture on any foliage, you know. So this was something completely new to me. That means I watched countless tutorials and I tried to, you know, make the best out of them. A short disclaimer, this video is not a how-to video, it's not a tutorial video, it's not a guide video. What you will see in the time-lapse is just how I managed to do things, but I'm still not on a level where I would try to give advice to anyone, but that doesn't mean that I can't give you a general workflow which I used. So I started, as you could see in the time-lapse, I started with the lines and then I used skin and subdivision modifier on top to create the structure of a tree, and I controlled the thickness of the branches with the skin modifier. Basically you select the point, you press Ctrl A, and then you can scale the thickness of the skin modifier, and then you just play with the position of the points. This part of the process went very well and very quickly, and it was fun to do. Next step was to bring the vertice count to something more workable, since you can have hundreds of trees in a forest on a scene at once, so you want to optimize your mesh, and what you see me doing right now is exactly how you shouldn't do it, because it takes too much time, it's not very efficient. In the end I found out that the actual mesh that I'm trying to retopo is already good topology. All I had to do was just remove vertices which shouldn't be there, and yeah, I would save myself a lot of time. The next step was to UV unwrap the low poly version of the tree model, so that I am able to use it later in Adobe Substance Painter for texturing. Then I got a great time-consuming idea. Let's do a high poly version of the tree and sculpt on top of it to create a lot of texturing and details that I can then bring up with baking the high poly version of the model on the low poly version of the model in Adobe Substance Painter and create a lot of detail that way. You will see. This was a very time-consuming process, but I would be lying if I told you that I didn't enjoy it in the end. It was very enjoyable. The next step was to get the low poly and high poly mesh into Adobe Substance Painter and do some texturing. Now, I was quite amazed by what I could produce with my sculpting, so the sculpting actually paid off very nicely in the end, and it made all those stylized details able to be made very quickly. I didn't actually have to do anything manually during the texturing process, which is good. I mean, it saves time, and in the end the tree turned out to look very nice, in my opinion. Considering that I never made a tree before, I was quite satisfied with the results. And it was quite nice to see Substance Painter to work exactly how I wanted it to. I made some, you know, the dark spots and highlights and color gradient around the tree, so it made the tree look very, very stylized, exactly how I wanted it to look, which was perfect. And then probably the hardest and I would say more frustrating part for me was to figure out the leaves and how to distribute the leaves, how to make, you know, the leaves on the tree look good, but I never did anything like that. So this was again a lot of tutorials, a lot of analyzing how other people do it, and then trying for myself what works best for this style and what I can use and how to make the workflow the best. What you see on the time-lapse, that was not the actual thing. Like, I had to redo it like 5 or 6 times until I was satisfied with the result. So let's take a look at the map from the Unreal right now, so I can show you the 3 iterations. This is what you've seen on the last video, and now we have this, well, the base structure of the tree. Then this is the first tree with the leaves which I made, and yes, I also made basically I made everything. Okay, the alpha maps you see, I made the textures, I made materials in Unreal, and that was another thing that I will discuss shortly. But let me first show you the trees, how they looked like. So how they evolved, let's say. This is the second iteration. I made the alpha a little bit smaller, but this made the tree look not exactly stylized. So I was experimenting more. I tried to make it something in between now, and still I wasn't happy. Then I said to myself, okay, let's try to play with the materials in Unreal. So I tried to make the gradient where you have one color on the bottom and it fades through into another color on the top. Very good for stylized, right? But I was not very satisfied with this. So then I changed the alpha mask for something more, let's say, simple. Just little ellipse shapes. And I also messed with the materials a little bit more in the Unreal. As you can see, this material already has the simple wind simulation going on. Yes. And if the video is lagging, I'm very sorry. My computer is hard at work right now. And then I spent a lot of time, I think like one whole day, to perfect the material, the one and only master material for Foliage, and this is how it looks like. It's a little bit crazy. It's a bunch of tutorials which I watched, and then I kind of took the best of those tutorials, what worked, and I tried to produce one master material for Unreal. And that means I don't have to do it again, ever. Like, this is my master material for Foliage. This is how I want the stylized Foliage to look like. If I go further from these trees, they really, I love how they look. Hopefully this shows on the YouTube somehow, but yeah. And obviously I was making more assets. I was making the grass, you see. Little grass, the same material instance. Then I was making this bush, again, same material instance from the master material. So, and these are instanced foliage meshes. So that means I made them through the foliage thing here, where I can make grass, and I want to make a rock, and maybe a bush, or a tree. This is how you should instance foliage in a project. And there were a lot of troubles trying to figure out how to make the gradient work, how to make the wind work for instance objects, and blah 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 blah. It was not so easy in the end, but I pulled it off, and I think they look gorgeous. In fact, let me go over here. This over here, this will be the thumbnail for the video. This is what you probably seen when you clicked on this video. I really like how the bushes turned out, but they also took like 2 or 3 tries to get them right. Okay, so let's wrap this video up. So I made a tree asset entirely, bush, grass throughout the last week. I also made a master material for foliage in Unreal, which taught me a lot. Like, this was a big learning thing for me, because materials in Unreal are used all over the place, and you kind of need to go through the process of, you know, fiddling with it and watching tutorials and figuring out how to make the materials appear the way you want them to, and how to implement controls into your material instances, and basically how to even instance the materials. Because if performance is considered, then you shouldn't have many master materials. And yeah, a lot of tutorials I've seen, they don't even consider it. They just use, they create a new material for every mesh they have on scene, which is crazy. Very important things that I learned throughout the last week. However, that doesn't mean I was 100% efficient. Of course, I had times when I wasn't really doing much and I was just, you know, in the tutorial hell, or I had work that day and I didn't get much time to work on this. But I have to say that so far I spend a lot of time on this. I would say weekly we are going at around 70 to 80 hours, which is much more than I do in my regular work. So yeah, I do spend a lot of time behind the screen, and this is what I want to mention. If somebody feels like he is behind, or he looks at these videos and he sees, oh my god, this guy is in the week number 2 and he already knows so many things. I mean, these videos are not aimed to discourage anybody. It's totally okay. Somebody learns slower, somebody faster, someone will figure things out. You know, it's at their own pace. But I have to say that the journey so far has been very enjoyable. Very enjoyable. A lot of knowledge that I gained. And there's a sea of knowledge to be gained. Even now, like, I feel like I barely scratched the surface. Keep creating if it brings you joy. That's what matters mostly. And yeah, don't get discouraged. Just keep moving forward. Okay, what's the plan for the next week, for the week number 3? I really feel like it's about time to actually define what the project will be about, because so far I've been kind of messing with the assets and making my own things. Yeah, we might end up not even using these, okay, but the knowledge that I gained, the experience that I gained in the process of making them is invaluable. Okay, it was very important for me to understand the processes that go behind creating an asset, and I still think I don't understand much at all, but at least the core basics, you know. So it's a good foundation that I can build on. The goal for the next week is to define the game, define the game idea, what the game concept will be, what are we actually working on, because so far that has not been very well considered. So that's the goal for the next week. Okay guys, thank you for watching and see you next week. Bye bye.